Hello and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Discuss. I am Alex.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to talk about Jurassic World Dominion, but I think in order to get to the full context of our feelings on the movie, we have to go back to the start of this piece of shit trilogy and start with our brief discussions of the previous two films. So let's just breeze past these as quickly as we can. Maybe it won't be quick. We'll see. Let's
It might
discuss
be quick
Jurassic.
yeah, the
Yeah,
first one might be quick for
Jurassic
me,
World.
but
Let's talk Jurassic World real quick.
okay. Um, I don't hate Jurassic World, but I don't really like it either. It's just such a very like okay, whatever movie. Um, you kind of have to ask the question for like all three of these movies. It's more apparent with the second and third one, but also with this one as to like why would you do this? And I'm not talking about like making the films. I mean like in the events of these films, like the plot themselves, there's just a lot of like who thought this was a good idea? Like why is making the most dangerous dinosaur of all time for an amusement park a good idea for an amusement park? You know, and it's just like that's like the biggest hurdle that all three of these movies have. But it gets even worse as the trilogy goes on, in my opinion. The only like okay thing about it that I kind of like is that the only like twist it really has is that this time the theme park is actually open. I don't know how they crossed all of those hurdles and managed to do that after the events of the first movie and like that entire trilogy, kind of realizing that making dinosaurs is kind of a mistake. It kind of undoes all of that, but whatever. It's a fun movie, and the other two aren't. That's the best praise I can give to Jurassic World.
Yeah. So I don't mind Jurassic World. I think it's a fine movie. See, I liked the movie when it came out. I like it less now. I don't hate it by any means. I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's something to be despised. I don't think it's an insult to the Jurassic Park series, considering, personally, I think the first two sequels already were. Like,
Yeah.
I think I think it's definitely better than 2 and 3. That's my hot take anyway. I just have no
Yeah,
real
it's
interest in.
better than two and three. I think I like two more. I like it more than
Okay.
three, though. Yeah.
I, I just have no real interest in ever watching it again, and any of these movies for that matter. Like, I'm sorry, internet.
Any of the Jurassic Park sequels. You only need the first one. You really
Exactly.
only need the first one.
So, similar to how I approach Star Wars, I went into Jurassic World thinking, well, it's not going to be Jurassic Park. You've already made the serious point. You've done that already. Because really, there's only one story you can tell with this sort of premise. You have people fuck about with nature. They ultimately suffer the consequences by acting like gods.
There really isn't any other way to do it. And by opening the theme park in this movie, it just means that it'll happen again. And as a casual Jurassic Park fan, and by casual, I mean, I love the first movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I don't like the sequels. Jurassic
Yeah.
World is good casual fun, although I do have a slight soft spot for the third one. That's just me personally.
I don't get that. I don't remember the third one at all. There's a few
Alan.
moments. That one, and it's like I remember Alan Grant looking at the dead dinosaur, and then there's an alive one 1 second later. That's all I remember from that movie. And there's like a
Yeah.
weird parachuting sequence or something. I don't know. That movie's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, but here's the big problem with these sequels, with the exception of the second one, of course. It's that no one directs like Spielberg. And
Right.
that first movie, and I'm just gravitating towards criticisms of the effects. I'm not sure why, but I thought there were some strange choices, not just in Jurassic World, but in the other sequels as well. Like especially close-up photography. Like I didn't like how that opening shot of Jurassic World is a CGI egg, when in the first film there's a practical dinosaur coming out of a practical egg, and I don't know. I wouldn't want my movie to open on a completely CGI shot. And you can
Yeah.
tell when an entire shot is computer generated. Like, I mean, there's an interesting discussion to be said on that. And a lot of people will complain about the effects because, the whole wow factor of the original film was the CGI. And that kind of kicked the door open for, computer generated creatures around that time.
Right.
Like, I'm not too fussed about the CG in these movies, but I find close-up shots to be bothersome to me. Like, the only time I recall from Jurassic World where they use a practical dinosaur was when Chris Pratt is comforting that one sick dinosaur. He puts his hand on it, and it's like
That
you
was
could
practical? I
tell
thought that was CG.
that's practical. That's a practical
Okay.
dinosaur.
All right. Little respect there.
Yeah, but I do like the sort of animal rights themes being there with Chris Pratt's character, and I think there is a little bit of nuance in there, and I like that. And as a fun action movie, again, I think you can only tell the one story, and if they're going to do it, they can be, I guess, self-aware about it, and the ending gets ridiculous. It just
The going for an animal rights theme with this trilogy, that definitely falls apart because they dig themselves into a hole in the second one, but we'll get into that.
yes. So at this point, it should just be schlocky because you've made the point. You've done the serious point. Like, even the original Jurassic Park had schlocky moments, and I just like seeing a raptor jump on a T-Rex's back and fight a bigger dinosaur. Like, I think that's awesome.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah. Quick question, because I know this character is a bit divisive. What do you think of Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Jurassic World?
Um, I haven't seen that movie in so long. But he was the one who wanted to train the raptors and use them
Yes.
for like military experience.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so that fails. And then they want to do it again, I guess, in the second one. And then that fails. No one learns from their mistakes in this entire franchise.
Yeah. But here's the crazy thing. I might defend the Vincent D'Onofrio character here for a second. Like, I think his character was sort of the best story to tell if you're going to make a Jurassic Park movie in 2015. The notion of it, and I like when they said in the trailer, I immediately thought this like is the way it should be. Like, the fact that Bryce Dallas Howard's character says we've learned more in the past decade from genetics than we've learned from half a century of digging up bones. And it's like, yeah, of course these guys think, oh, well, technology is better now. We can do it again. And there is a bit of commentary in that in a critical sense when, like I alluded to, the opening shot is CG as opposed to practical effects, which is what made the first film work. So there's even a funny parallel there. The notion of like, we can make bigger dinosaurs. It'll scare the kids. Like it knows what it is in some ways, and it's making this film about it. And I think the notion of the Vincent D'Onofrio character going like, look, you can control them. We can control them as well. Like, I mean, I've spoken to some people who have been in the military where some of the lines that he says are completely ridiculous. But I think he says something like, imagine if we had some on the field. It's like, yeah, they would have been gunned down immediately.
Yeah.
But just the notion of him being like, when he's looking at that one raptor and he says, yeah, he makes that growl when he sees something he wants to eat. And then eventually he gets eaten.
Yeah.
I think the notion of these guys who run the park get to such a point where they're like, we invented this new dinosaur that's eating its sister, basically. And they still don't care about the fact that it's a super dangerous thing. Like, it's like, oh, like I said, it'll scare the kids, right? Like, they are so in over their heads that even these military guys are like, yeah, now that you can control these, like, we should put them in the military as well. Like, it just keeps building up to the point of it exploding in their face, and innocent people get killed. And, that one helper lady who didn't do her job right, it got eaten by the fish. And,
Oh, yeah.
You
see, like, that stuff is dumb, but at least it, like, ties into dinosaurs. At the very least, it ties into dinosaurs. Whereas the third movie, it honestly, like, can we talk about Fallen Kingdom now? Is there any more to say about Jurassic World?
I want to talk
You s-
about that death real quick.
Okay.
That really brutal death.
Yes. I
They
do
weren't
remember
for
that. Wasn't she like jumped around from like flying dinosaur to flying dinosaur and then yeah, eventually
yeah,
eaten
then
by the
eventually get to
fish?
yeah. So like they weren't forgiving to her. Like I actually really liked that moment. I kind of wanted more of that, to be honest. Like I couldn't help but think they were going for a Jaws thing with her getting like chucked in and out of the water. Like it was hard to watch, but in a good way, in a sort of like B movie way almost. And
Yeah.
I've spoken to people who were legitimately bothered by that moment. And I was like, the movie needed that moment 100%. You needed a character that was innocent that could be killed because any of the characters who work for the park, I don't think you can look at them as innocent. Like if BD Wong suddenly got eaten by a dinosaur, people would have been like, well, you created them. You should have seen this coming. Uh,
Right.
this one assistant who was just there to watch the kids, like this horrible thing happens to her. And it's not like we spend time mourning it and make a huge deal about it, but it needed to be a real quick thing and it still happens. Like, holy crap.
And like that's like the twist of the trilogy that like I think is a good idea. It's a good concept to have dinosaurs be played as victims in this trilogy. The
Mhm.
execution's horrible, but it's a neat idea.
And I wonder, we only got that one death because of ratings. They weren't afraid to like go get too graphic or anything like that. I mean, I don't mean to be like a curmudgeon or anything like that, but they don't make movies like they used to. I mean, like back in the 80s, like you could get away with all sorts of things. Now, granted, PG-13 didn't exactly become a big thing at that point. But even in like other movies, like you can't get kids to say like shit anymore, except for like in Goonies.
You can't even really make an R-rated movie without being controversial.
I
And
know.
like that's the whole point of R-rated movies. They're kind of meant to be controversial.
Yeah. Let's talk about Fallen Kingdom.
Okay.
All
Um
right, so I have a bit of a confession to make. I did not see Fallen Kingdom in theaters. I only watched this for the first time about a week ago. And
you see, I had the non-luxury of seeing this in the theaters. Um and I don't really remember anything about this movie. I just remember the only reason why I remember seeing it in theaters because it was like it was a weird theater that I went to. It was like in Virginia, and it was a really cool theater. Like it had like two or three stories to it, and I'm like, this is awesome. And I thought this is a
Mhm.
really cool theater. I don't remember. I mean, I remember that this movie doesn't work as a structure. It it's so weird, and it's like all the both sequels like get like really weird and like this is like all right. You know, you said it earlier. You know, you can't get to the first movie's quality. I've kind of accepted that after Fallen Kingdom, but like, I at the very least expect it to be like a completed film, and it's like it just wasn't. There's no second act in Fallen Kingdom at all. It just goes straight from the island blowing up and escaping the dinosaurs to haunted house secret auction for weaponizing dinosaurs again. And in the middle of all of that, we have a weird subplot with a clone, which kind of becomes useless in the third movie. It's so weird.
Okay, so Jurassic World, it rocked the world by storm. So, good job for them. Every trailer for Fallen Kingdom, I remember looked awful. It looked
Yeah, I remember there was the shot with like Chris Pratt and the baby raptor, and like his eyesight wasn't really where the raptor was, and it's like, oh boy.
yeah, and I heard really bad things about it, hence why I didn't watch this in theaters. But the reason I finally got around to watching it was because Dominion somehow got worse reviews. And I was like, well, now I have to see Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
And I want to say, as I was watching it, I didn't hate it. I was just bored most of the time, but nothing really happens to the point where I was like, this is it. This is the worst thing I'm ever going to see. Up until the very ending.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right. So as a newcomer to Fallen Kingdom, I'm going to summarize it as best I can, if you don't mind. Correct me if I make any mistakes along the way.
I mean, you just saw it. I haven't seen it since theater, so you probably have better insight than I do.
Okay. So we left Jurassic World. We left the island, and all the dinosaurs are still there. And apparently, a volcano that's been on the island forever, which is news to us, is going to go off and kill all the dinosaurs.
I'll accept that.
So we have what almost seems like a parody, but it's supposed to be taken very seriously. These dinosaur rights activists are trying to get the dinosaurs off the island in a franchise that's always been about, every time we every time we try to fuck with dinosaurs, they fuck with us back, and it never works out properly. So they come off really goofy and cartoony.
Here's one thing you kind of, again, it's like with the questions of like, all right, well, why didn't you just do this? I mean, I know that the Jurassic World movies, they kind of ignore Jurassic Park 2 and 3, but they're still part of the franchise, and those movies take place on a different island. So you have to like ask yourself, well, why didn't you just move them there? Why do you have to take them to the mainland?
It's a good question. But these activists are our main characters. They're our heroes. They want to save the dinosaurs. So they go there, and Chris Pratt joins along, even though he was building a house in the middle of nowhere. And then, oh no, it turns out the secret people funding our secret program are the bad guys. And they put the dinosaurs on a secret auction. And so half the movie is them digging around on an island, and the other half is them running around in a haunted mansion with a dinosaur auction going down the basement with Arnim Zola from the Captain America franchise. So
is that really
Dobby.
Arnim Zola?
Yes. It's Dobby. So Dobby be selling dinosaurs for an incredibly low price. I mean, you'd think a dinosaur would go well over the millions, but there's some that sell for nothing. So honestly, they should have jumped on that. It's a really weird thing where you'd think a dinosaur, a thing that shouldn't exist, should go for astronomical amounts of money. It just doesn't. What else happened in the movie? There's a part where Chris Pratt, like, either he almost touches lava or he does touch lava because he's paralyzed. I don't really remember that part already. The movie ends, and I'm going to talk about the fucking ending, and I hope everyone is ready for it. All the dinosaurs are trapped in some big room, and they're like, oh no, we accidentally knocked into a gas container earlier in a fight, and now the gas is leaking, and all the dinosaurs are going to die. And it's like, well, this solves all our problems. Now we don't have to worry about the dinosaurs anymore. Thanks a lot. And what's her name? Bryce Dallas Howard from A Dog's Way Home is like, I'm going to press the button and it's going to release all the dinosaurs. And Chris Pratt's like, don't you dare. Like, that's an awful idea. Don't release these dinosaurs into the public. These dinosaurs are going to run and eat people and all sorts of stuff. You're going to change the world. And she goes, you're right. I won't. Then a little girl who we found out is actually a clone presses the button, lets out all the dinosaurs. And it's like, that's life. And now dinosaurs are just out and about, and that's the world, and everyone is fine with it. The end.
I'm sure that's going to be a really, really big obstacle in the third movie, right? Dinosaurs are out in the world. That's going to be your main conflict, right? It can't be anything else. It cannot be anything else. Not locusts.
There's a really great part in Fallen Kingdom where everyone is running off the island because the volcano went off. And one Brachiosaurus, which is the dinosaur in the first movie that eats from the tree. You know what I'm talking about?
He does the pose.
Yes. So he comes up at the dock, and it's really comical because there's smoke and brimstone coming, and you see it enveloped in the smoke and fire, and it does the pose to be like, remember me from Jurassic Park 1993? And the film, but here's the kicker. The filmmakers actually went online and said, you know what? I'm glad you pointed that out. We hear from the people that made that movie. We can confirm that, yes, that was the original dinosaur that you saw die. And now you're going to go online and go, oh, I cried when the dinosaur died. It was caught up in the flames. Yeah, I really cried. It was so heartbreaking. Like, Who cares about the other dinosaurs? That one from the original film, that's what counts.
Let's
All right,
talk
let's
about
start
Jurassic
before.
World Dominion.
Yeah, let me just start off with going into the Colin Trevorrow of it all. Um, so he directed the first and the third film. The reason he didn't do the second one was because he was originally going to direct The Rise of Skywalker, and but he still is. I believe he's still a credited writer for Fallen Kingdom.
I think so.
So,
He had some involvement. This was
so
definitely
it's
like
like,
his trilogy, basically.
yeah. So it's like, well, gee, I wonder what the weak link is here. And the only other film of his that I've seen is Safety Not Guaranteed. And that film has some charming moments, but it's just a misguided film. And I won't lie, when it was announced that he was not directing Star Wars anymore, I was like, I'm glad. I'm glad he's not doing it. But
And then
to
J.J.
be,
Abrams stepped in, and now you kind of wish he was doing it.
I do want to address that real quick, the Duel of the Fates script, which I have read online. I do have I have a digital copy of it. I have it saved. But
Mm.
that film is very problematic, the Duel of the Fates script. But I would have preferred it over what we actually got. But that's all I'll say on the matter. And what I mean by that is it felt like a proper continuation of The Last Jedi. But then that's the thing with this Jurassic Park trilogy, or Jurassic World rather. It seemed like it was planned out all on Trevorrow's own terms. But it's not good.
Felt like, no, it felt like he had like cliff notes of like what I want to do. Ultimately, the end goal is that he wanted this trilogy to end up with dinosaurs on the mainland and them kind of running around the world. That's where you go. But here's the main problem. You've portrayed dinosaurs as like victims throughout this entire trilogy. And you've also portrayed them as like heroes and in terms of like them killing the dinosaur or killing the more dangerous dinosaurs and everything. So when you have dinosaurs running around the world, you can't suddenly have them be the bad guys or the main conflicts of the movie, because that kind of undermines what you've been doing that with this whole trilogy. So what do? You introduce an unknown evil corporation and have them develop evil locusts or something like that. And it's just like, oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Like, look, say what you will about Fallen Kingdom, but it ends in a way where it's like, okay, we're gonna go into a totally new direction now.
Right.
Dinosaurs are gonna cause mayhem all throughout the world, and it's like, and then it's like, is that what we're gonna get, Colin Trevorrow? And then Colin Trevorrow's like, ha 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 ha. No, you're gonna get crop-eating bugs instead.
and it's like, that's the thing. It's like, it's a fun idea, and it's like I said, you can't get to the first one. I'm fine with that. If this is just a fun schlocky action movie with dinosaurs running around the world and have that be your main conflict, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with a dumb action movie at this point. I'll take it. But like, it's kind of that. But again, it's like, Locust, is this all we can do?
Me to the biggest problem I have with this movie, and with Fallen Kingdom for that matter. These are very boring movies. They're really boring.
And they play out their desperation cards in this one and bring back Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum, although he was in Fallen Kingdom. He didn't do anything. He just sat on a chair.
And Laura Dern.
And Laura Dern, yes.
And Dotson. Back. We got Dotson here. See, nobody cares.
See, nobody cares. But it's like, I was thinking about this like while watching the movie, and it's like, Sam Neill, he digs up bones. What is he going to do with like locusts and all of this? And it's like, it's so obvious. Like, really the only reason they're all there is just, because Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, these characters. It's what gets you into the theater, because the movie sucks.
And it's just baffling to me that the locust thing was not really present in the marketing for the movie at all. Like they really downplay in the actual film. They kind of downplay the dinosaurs. I felt
They did. They hardly felt like they were in it. They don't really take advantage of the fact that dinosaurs are now roaming the earth. There's a little like news montage in the beginning, and that's pretty much it. And there's a little sequence where there's like a black market for dinosaurs. And so it's like, all right, well, humans have already clearly like grabbed a hold of the situation. And if you've gotten to the point where you can, have a black market for dinosaurs, I feel like you kind of have these under control. And it's like the big predators, the T-Rex and the bigger T-Rex are already in this facility. So it's not like there's any conflict going on with the actual dinosaurs. They're just kind of there from time to time. So
yeah.
it's like, well, what do? You have Richard Parker develop locusts. All right. I want to make sure I'm getting this right because this is a very fast movie, despite it being really boring. My understanding is that this evil corporation were developing locusts so that they could wipe out the food chain for crops that are not their own. So they could be like the sole provider of the food chain and risk putting the entire world in a famine, which they kind of end up
I
doing.
guess it doesn't really make much sense, but I guess it's
and then they try to
undo
here. That because they realize that's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. It's so dumb.
Campbell Scott's character like left me baffled. That's all I'll say about him.
Is that the one who was?
That's Richard Parker.
That's Richard Parker. Okay.
That's the new Dotson.
He was my favorite part of the entire movie, because and it was just because of one scene. But it's like when I don't know, someone's like, "Sir, they've escaped," and like he kind of goes on his little tangent, but it's like it's so awkward and it's just so funny. But it's like intentionally, unintentionally funny, and it's great.
I will say, like, I couldn't help but laugh at this film several times. It got to that level of embarrassment for me. Like, this is just an embarrassing movie. And this leads into a bigger problem I have with not just this film, but the state of Hollywood in general, is that I am ready for this nostalgia porn era of film to die. It needs to die and go extinct. I am ready. Like I felt this with Star Wars. I'm feeling this with Jurassic Park. Now there are some rare exceptions, like Top Gun. That's a great legacy sequel.
Go see Top Gun, everyone.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
Everyone's pretty much seen it at this point. It's making lots of money, and this is too, unfortunately.
Yeah, but, I mean, I work in the movie theater, so I think Top Gun is still making more. Like it's selling more tickets than Jurassic World right now.
Good.
So, yeah.
But this just needs to die, this practice. Like, and even like the talents of the original film's trio, I felt were completely wasted in this film. Like, I didn't feel like...
It's because you have three of them there, and out of the three, only one has any sort of function, and that's Laura Dern. And maybe Jeff Goldblum to an extent. Sam Neill did not need to be in this at all. He's only in it just because Sam Neill. But yeah, that's the thing. It's kind of like Fallen Kingdom in a way where you have like two different movies going on. Fallen Kingdom, you had the blowing up part and then the haunted house part, but they were at least like clearly separate. And here you have two movies going on at once. You have the original trio and Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard trying to find the clone, who revelation turns out to not be a clone, but just a perfect copy of the mother. It was really weird. But yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen a big budget franchise film that reaches the depths of embarrassment that this film does. Like I'm really struggling. And I don't know, because I mean, lots of people have been comparing this trilogy to the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And I get where they're coming from. I really do. But I don't know,
Yeah.
because I mean, the Star Wars sequel trilogy is an example of just like how not to plan a trilogy.
Yeah,
Um,
basically.
whereas this seemed like it was planned out well, maybe not so well for the most part by one
This
guy.
is just like ideas versus executions. You know, some
Yeah.
ideas in this trilogy are okay, and I like where they're going at with in terms of like humanizing the dinosaurs, but you can't have, dinosaurs that you want to root for and have the cliffhanger of this trilogy is that dinosaurs are not running around the earth. You can't have those two ideas in the same, playing field, because then yeah, you kind of have to get desperate and say, oh, there's an evil
Mm.
corporation behind all of this. That's all you can do.
Yeah. And I will say, I think I might prefer Dominion over Fallen Kingdom just by a bit. But that's not really saying much.
I
It's
yeah,
really not.
I
Like
I, I don't I can't really say which one I prefer because it's literally comparing diarrhea to vomit, whichever one's colorful, I guess. But Jurassic Fallen Kingdom, I don't like either of these. It's just I think they're both terrible. And I remember like seeing the reviews for the new one come in. And I'm like, I was like, how could you get worse than the last one? Like, I kept thinking about that while I was like going to go see it, and then I think I like Fallen Kingdom a tad bit more. And the reason
okay.
why is just because, again, I don't like either of them, but at the very least, Fallen Kingdom is about the dinosaurs, even with what they do with them is stupid. This movie is just so far removed from like anything about the first Jurassic Park. And if you can't even at the very least have like entertaining sequences with dinosaurs, which is like what this whole new franchise is about, then it's like it was just a complete waste of time. And I don't know which movie's longer, but I know that this new one's like 2 hours 27, I think.
This was a long one.
Yeah.
But it is kind of bold that Colin Trevorrow is able to make The Rise of Skywalker look like The Last Crusade by comparison with this.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I was like, The Rise of Skywalker was, it's messy and desperate, but I don't know. They're both desperate in like kind of different ways. Bringing back Palpatine is a stupid, stupid, stupid idea. But it's there to service the plot in a way. Whereas, I mean, I'm fine seeing these characters come back, like Sam Neill and Warden and all of them. It's like it's fun to see them again, but they have nothing to do. They're literally there just because these characters.
Yeah. I guess in conclusion for me about this film is that this one was rough. This is so far my least favorite film of the year. And I've seen Morbius. It's worse than Morbius.
I haven't seen Morbius yet. I will eventually, but I still need to see Let There Be Carnage and all of that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this film gets a thumbs down for me. I mean, this whole trilogy, I would say, is big waste of time.
Down.
Big waste of time. Big thumbs down. It just doesn't. You don't need these films. You really don't. You just need the original film. That's
you just
all
need the
you
original. Need. It recently came out on 4K individually. Finally,
it did.
Just go get that. That's all you need.
It's kind of. I was just thinking about this the other day recently. Like that movie is the original one is so good. And Steven Spielberg, even though he's one of the most famous directors of all time, I still think in some ways he's very underrated. Like as a director, I think his skills as a filmmaker, as a visual storyteller in like all of his movies, but in Jurassic Park particularly, it's so strong. But like, there's nothing else like that in any of these movies. Even the sequel he did. I mean, there are some nice sequences in the Lost World, but there's
Yeah, there
nothing
are fun sequences there,
but there's really nothing that tops the original film.
no, absolutely not.
And
And that's not just like purely based on nostalgia for this movie. It's really just because that movie is just genuinely really, really good. You know, it's like I wouldn't call myself like a Jurassic Park fan. I just really love the first movie. It's just really good.
exactly, yes.
None of the other movies are that great. So
Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about Dominion and the Jurassic World trilogy as a whole, where hopefully we'll never be able to talk about. Where I did hear someone say, you know, Jurassic World Dominion is so bad, but it's so bad that we'll likely never talk about it again, and so therefore it's kind of great. Like that is just the level of nihilism that I just personally refuse to go down to think of film is so bad that I'll forget about it.
that's true.
I don't know if I'll ever get down to that form of nihilism.
That's the thing. It's like at least it's universally just kind of like, hated. Whereas like there's not
Is
really
it
any
though? Because
discourse.
I still see lots of people defending these movies, and if you, I'm not saying you're wrong for liking these movies, but like if your priority is to just see dinosaur action, then I'm gonna feel you're gonna be very disappointed with
You're gonna be
these movies.
really disappointed with this one. There's like next to no dino action until the very end. I mean, that's like the one sequence that I actually did kind of like is like all the characters kind of united, and then there was the like one big dinosaur, and it was a fun sequence. It wasn't really long because we have to get back to the locust, but
The locust. All right. Anything else you want to say about these movies?
no, just don't watch them if you haven't seen them. Don't watch any of the sequels. Just watch the first one. It's really all you need.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Hopefully you got some entertainment out of that. Yeah, thanks a lot. We'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.